We're beginning a season in our church. Epiphany seemed the right time to start discussing this. And for the last number of months, the leadership team has been going over this, and we had some folks out of the leadership team that met together, and we decided that maybe it would be good for us to look not only at where we are as a church, but where we've been, and then try to pray and see where God is leading us. It's good to know these things, isn't it? It helps us to make decisions about our future. If you look around us, there's plenty of space for people to sit. There's plenty of space for people who may not know Christ to come and join with us. We shouldn't see them so much as empty spots as we should see them as places reserved for folks who have yet to come, but who very much need to be invited. So how do we get there? What is our vision for the future? And so this statement that we've come up with and we've prayed over and we've talked about is this, and I'd like to invite you to say it with me. Our vision is a community of people redeemed into God's kingdom to live out forgiveness, wholeness, and righteousness. Okay, I'm going to ask some questions here. First of all, who wants to lead a life that is forgiven? Forgiven not only by God, but by the people in our lives who we may have done something that we need forgiveness for. We need forgiveness, right? Okay. Now, who here wants a life that is whole and complete? Amen. Okay. How about righteousness? This is a word that we may have to discuss a little bit. A life that is made right by God. Who wants to live a life that is right in standing with God? Yeah, we can't get there by ourselves, by the way. But you see, all of these things are things that we would love to be a part of our community, are here in this community of faith. And these are things that I think that the church itself, and not just our church, but we're going to make this kind of our motto for the next little while, but these are things that we would like other people to come in and be a part of. Does anybody know people who should probably be living out lives that need to be forgiven or maybe learn to forgive others? I do. I myself fall in that category. How about wholeness? Do we know people that need wholeness in their lives that maybe that you can hear in their voices there's something in life that just isn't there? You know people? Yeah. And righteousness. This, I think, is the topic where we need to just say, we don't understand everything that God wants to do for us, to make us right with Him. But we know that we need it. And we know that we need God's power to do it. And we know that this is something that other folks need too. And so we'd like to be a community of people who are redeemed into God's kingdom that lives out forgiveness, wholeness, and righteousness. Not a bad vision, I don't think. Is it one that you think that you would be willing to be a part of? Thank you, because we've put quite a bit of, I don't want to say blood, sweat, and tears, but at least sweat and tears into this. And I really think that this is something that we can use as a guideline for the future. And what does this have to do with our passage today? Anybody got that question yet? Let's go there. What on earth would make these wise men, and the language says magi, which is a very specific term, what do you think it would take for them to pick up where they were at, put a lot of their life and livelihood onto the backs of some animals, and go out following a star that they saw rising in the east? Something would have to be very compelling, don't you think? Or maybe the life that they were in didn't have all the answers that they felt that they needed. I mean, you don't just pick up and do something like that for any old reason, do you? Faith, maybe. How about this? Earlier this week, I ended up visiting the doctor on Thursday. And I had a list of stuff that I went to the doctor with. Now, I haven't seen an actual doctor in more than a year, so shame on me. And he made me promise to come back for a physical. It's about that time. But I went to my doctor, and on the list of things that I've had concerns about, one of them was my allergies. I've got a specific allergy that it seems to be getting very, very acute, like meaning very sharp. It's starting to become very problematic for me. But yet, even though it was on my list of things, it wasn't actually what got me in the door to see the doctor. And for those of you that don't know, I have ADD. I have attention deficit disorder. I've had it my entire life. And I've been meaning to see my doctor so that maybe there are some things they can suggest to me that can help me a little bit in that area. But, you know, I've been going around for 43 years with this. That wasn't what got me into my doctor's office. And I started this week out with a very glorious cold. And yet, that wasn't what got me into my doctor's office. And at this point, I had to tell my doctor I really wasn't a hypochondriac. The thing that got me into the doctor's office was I put out my back earlier this week. And the pain got to the point where I couldn't take it. And so I really needed somebody to help me get to a future without pain. Does that make sense to you? Sometimes we have all these issues in life and we don't that they don't seem that important to us. You know, I can deal with my allergies. I can avoid the things that I'm allergic to, but sometimes they hit me and I have to deal with them. The ADD, I've had it long enough and I've learned coping mechanisms and how to work with it. That wasn't exactly what got me was the pain. Anybody ever had pain that got your attention? Got you to go see your doctor? Then you got to overwhelm your doctor with all the problems you hadn't been telling him about? God bless the doctors in this world because they get to see people in their most vulnerable state. And thank God for Toradol. That got me walking again. In the lives of these people who were they're called the visitors from the east in some translations. They're called wise men. In the Greek, they're called magi. What about them made them see this star in the east and say, that is the solution for the problems of the world? That's what they're saying here. There's all sorts of other problems out there that were there and they had seen, but what's the one thing that put them on the road? What made them move? What made them seek a preferred future state? That's the language in leadership circles about what a vision statement entails, is what is our preferred future state? What are the things we're trying to shed ourselves of? Or maybe what's the thing we're trying to get to? What's the goal we're moving toward? What's the vision? There's got to be something that compels us to move towards something. And these magi are no different than us. I'll draw your attention to a passage in Ezekiel chapter 37. Some of you have read this probably before. It's the Valley of Dry Bones. It'll tell us something because Ezekiel was prophesying and he was living in the same region that these wise men came from, the Magi, this area called Persia. And Persia had this other religion happening at the time. It was called Zoroastrianism. And we see pieces of it actually in our culture and society today. Has anybody ever seen their horoscope show up in the newspaper? Well, the way that those horoscopes are developed actually came from this particular religion called Zoroastrianism, and it's a way of looking at the stars and see if there's mystical answers in the sky. Because somewhere along the way they realized they didn't have the answers within themselves. And another one of the particulars of this faith is, and this is kind of, I don't want to say grim or grotesque, but it'll make you raise your eyebrows a little bit. When they passed on from this world into the next, they didn't bury their dead. They left them out on a hillside or on a mountaintop or somewhere exposed so that the vultures and the other parts of nature could come and clean the bones. It's kind of gross, but that's what they did. It was kind of a cycle of life for them. Now that you've heard that, let us hear the word of the Lord in this moment. He says, and Ezekiel writes, "The Lord took hold of me, and I was carried away by the Spirit of the Lord to a valley filled with bones." Do you see where he's talking about now? God took him into a graveyard. He led me around among the bones that covered the valley floor. They were scattered everywhere across the ground and were completely dried out. Then he asked me, "Son of man, can these bones become living people again?" "O sovereign Lord," I replied, "you alone know the answer to that." Then he said to me, "Speak a prophetic message to these bones and say, 'Dry bones, listen to the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Look, I am going to put breath into you and make you live again. I will put flesh and muscles on you and cover you with skin. I will put breath into you and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord." So I spoke this message just as he told me, and suddenly as I spoke there was a rattling noise all across the valley, and the bones of each body came together and attached themselves as complete skeletons. And then as I watched, muscles and flesh formed over the bones, then skin formed to cover their bodies, but they still had no breath in them. Then he said to me, "Speak a prophetic message to the winds, Son of man. Speak a prophetic message and say, 'This is what the sovereign Lord says. Come, O breath from the four winds. Breathe into these dead bodies so that they may live again.'" So I spoke the message as he commanded me, and breath came into their bodies. They all came to life and stood up on their feet, a great army. Then he said to me, "Son of man, these bones represent the people of Israel. They are saying, 'We have become old, dry bones. All hope is gone. Our nation is finished.' Therefore prophesy to them and say, 'This is what the sovereign Lord says, O my people, I will open your graves of exile and cause you to rise again. Then I will bring you back to the land of Israel.'" How many of you have gone through dry spots in your life where you just didn't feel like God was there? Maybe at some point in your life you weren't talking to God. Jesus wasn't your answer yet, and things just weren't put together like you thought they should be, and it hurt. Feel alone. Maybe you were these dry bones laying on the ground. For our Magi, this was the faith that they were born to, and for hundreds of years, some encounter with the Jewish people in these lands that the Jewish people were in exile in had spoken this word that there was going to be this Messiah that was going to come and was going to join their dry bones back together and renew the vessel that they were, and was going to breathe life into them again so that they were whole and complete. maybe you're here today and you've gotten to a point in life where you need that breath to come and breathe into you. In the 1600s, there was a mathematician. His name was Blaise Pascal, and he wrote not only about mathematics, but about God, about theology. And when he was reflecting on the condition of humanity, he said that humanity sees all of the things around it and has contrived all sorts of things for us to be a part of with its celebrations and its music and its revelry. And yet all of these things man sees, and within it, he still feels an emptiness. And it is an emptiness that only God can fill. And from that idea, I've heard it said before, there's this God-shaped hole in our hearts. And it's really easy to say God-shaped hole, but if we reflect on what Pascal has told us, it's also a God-sized hole. It is a hole that no matter what we try to pour into it, we're always going to feel a need for something more. Does anybody feel the need for something more today? Something that is beyond what we experience in day-to-day life. That is the vision that God is giving. He gave that to these magi. Their religion left them dry, and they said, we are willing to pick up everything, and we don't know how long this journey is going to last. It ended up lasting 2 years, but we are going to go, and we are going to seek this Messiah, this Savior of the world, this one thing that we know can give us hope for the days to come. God is offering that hope to you today. He's offering you this vision of what life can be like in His presence. And so when these magi come to Christ, when they come to Bethlehem and seek this child who by that time was 2 years old, by the way, a toddler. They see the presence of God. Not someone in the stars, not some empty answer that makes us want more, but the infinite God of the universe who has no beginning and no end. He shed His glory, and He came to be this child, Jesus, to stand with us face to face, so that our vision of the days to come don't have to be empty. We don't have to be expecting all of life to be hurt and pain and despair. We don't have to live a life thinking that our future will be dry bones. We see in our story motivation, and we have options. The one we plainly see here is the option that the wise men took. And if you read further on into this story, after the wise men left, Herod got kind of really upset because they didn't stop by and tell him where the Christ was, this king. And so Herod didn't want someone that would challenge not only his power, but the power of his sons who would follow him on the throne. And he seeks them out, and there is this tragedy of the children of Bethlehem being killed. Even when we're offered the Christ, we have choices to make. We have the choice to be like these wise men, pick up and do everything that we can to follow Christ, or we can be like Herod, who would himself die a very horrible death as he tried to hold on to his power and his pride. Don't let what you think you know about the future and the way that you think you can build your own future be the thing that keeps you from God. God has a dream for you that's bigger than yourself. Go back 10 years and ask Larry White if he was going to be a preacher that would stand up and speak to people every week. Go back and ask him, because he'll laugh at you. I'd never dreamed this. And God has dreams for your life too, where you can share His Son with others in some way, whether it be in your vocation, whether it be in your day-to-day life, whatever it may be. God has a dream for your life that you haven't conceived of yet. But you have to be willing to follow the star and to seek the Christ. Are you willing? Because God's asking you the question, my child, what makes you move? Let it be Him. Let us bow our heads together.